I always wanted to have my own path in this, and I wanted to do my own thing and have my own look. And I thought the only way I could do that is by being out in the field and just doing this every day and just taking thousands of photos, going at things from way different angles than most photographers. A lot of them are bringing around big tripods and stuff. I think those keep you in the same place. It's about relaxing and letting the animals come to you. That's the big one.
Well, hello and welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today we are going to talk to my friend Karl Ramsdell, and we're talking to him on this podcast because probably a year ago he had no interest in photography, but now has an Instagram following of almost 3,000 people with a really high engagement rate. And he's actually created some really interesting nature images through just being obsessed with photographing birds, animals, seals, squirrels, you name it, but they're really interesting and engaging. And to me, this really gets at the core of photography, the value of it, in that it's not the technical game as much as what you're communicating, what your voice is, what your interests are, and communicating it through that medium. So I thought I'd have Karl come in, we could sit down, talk about it, and see what happens. So check it out, let us know what you think.
Oh, man. Dude.
Alrighty. Karl, welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. My surf buddy Karl, who I never thought I would have been talking to in this manner. It's kind of weird.
Thank you, Trent.
Okay, so it's really interesting to be talking to you in this manner because, geez, we've been friends now for, what, 15 years, and we met through surfing. And you were always around guys that were taking photos and everything else as we were surfing, but then I remember you'd always say, like, oh, I want photos, I don't like video. Like, you seem to have an interest in it, but you constantly were really disengaged with as far as taking photos or anything else. It never seemed to be that much of an interest to you. And in the last year, basically, you've picked up a professional grade camera and turned it into, like, you have almost 2,700 followers on Instagram now. And your engagement rate is around 8 to 10%, which is really good for Instagram. Like, a good engagement rate, I believe, is around 3 to 6%. I'm a professional photographer, and I don't have nearly as good of an engagement rate as you do on your stuff, which is pretty cool. But you are completely interested in shooting nature, which, again, I never would have, like, oh, Karl's going to become obsessed with photographing birds.
Right.
It's just way out of left field. So it's just really unique to sit here and talk with you about this subject matter, which is kind of cool. So what, first of all, made you want to pick up a professional grade camera and start to do this, and what drew you to the subject matter that you're shooting all the time?
Well, what kicked it all off, actually, is one day in particular, my friend texted me last winter, and he's like, there's a snowy owl.
Oh, the snowy owl?
Yeah, on the roof across the street. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Was that Carter?
No, this guy, John Fox, that I've known down there forever. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I went down there with my cell phone, because that's all I had, of course, and I started taking pictures of it. And I started realizing my dad had this animal stuffed when I was a kid with its wings open.
Snowy owl?
A snowy owl. And I was just like, this is so strange. I'm looking at a snowy owl and it's alive. And I just remember my dad having that stuffed when I was a kid. But anyways, I couldn't reach it with my cell phone. Like,
you get a real grainy picture and you zoom in on it.
Yeah, it was just like, that's how cell phone pics are. And I knew I needed something heavy, something that could reach it. So I went to Hunt's Photo out by the mall, and I'm like, what is the best bird camera you can buy? Because I was so obsessed with this snowy owl. And why you think just, I mean,
Why that snowy owl particularly?
It just I just love seeing its head spin like R2D2, and it would just look at me, and then it would scan everything else, and then it would look at me and just continue its scan, just keep spinning that head, and I was just floored by it. Those bright yellow eyes, and I just thought it was so beautiful. I just wanted to remember. I wanted to take photos of it so I could go back at that point in time where there was a snowy owl in Pine Point, Maine. And I still go back and look at those images all the time. And I'm like, wow, there was a snowy owl in Pine Point, Maine.
So from there, you started shooting that snowy owl, and then you just kind of like, if I can do this with a snowy owl, I can.
Yeah, when I got a camera, I thank my camera like every day. When I got a camera, it opened up like a whole new world for me, and I explain it much like a paddleboard. Opened up a world for me. It opened up the ocean for me. Instead of just hanging out on the shore and riding waves, like a paddleboard gets you out into the ocean, and you start seeing all these things you would have never seen.
I remember you telling me about how when you're up on a paddleboard, I don't paddleboard, by the way, I can't do it. But when you're up on a paddleboard, you actually see down into the water.
Yeah, and you're quiet too, and you can come up on animals, and they're like, "Whoa, we weren't expecting this." You can see them close,
Right.
And what the camera did is that now I'm always looking up in the trees. I'm always looking, up in the sky. I see everything now. I see something where an animal would go to. I see something an animal would jump over. Like, I am seeing everything now, and every day I'm just fascinated by it.
Huh. Scoot in probably a little closer and just turn your knees that way. That way you won't go out of frame. So it's kind of changing the way you're interacting with the world just because you enjoy that process of capturing images of animals.
Yeah.
So
it's changed my perception of everything.
I had an interesting experience. I went to meet with a potential client at one point, and I was talking to him about his business and everything else. And then he had this, I think he had like the actual head mounted of a deer or something. And he went into the process of how he got that. He was like, I did this trip to Montana or wherever, and we stayed at a hunting lodge, and we got up early this one morning, and it was like just this beautiful morning and misty and everything else, and this beautiful elk came out of the fog, and then I just raised my gun and I looked at, and at that moment he realized, like, I didn't need to kill this thing,
Right.
And as he was describing like how he like raised his gun and shot, he kind of paused and was like, maybe next time I'll take a camera. Like, he genuinely had that moment of like, I don't need to kill this thing as much as go and experience that moment and remember it, like you're saying, through an image.
Right. And if he doesn't kill it, he can go back and see it another day.
Now that's interesting. You've found certain animals that you keep revisiting.
Yeah, all the time, because animals, that's where the term creatures of habit came from. Animals do the same thing at the same time almost every day.
Oh, wow.
Most animals. So I learned that from like a lot of deer hunters. Like, they will watch a deer, say, all summer, go to the same watering hole at like 9:45 every day. They do the same thing.
Shoot it later.
They do the same thing every day, and it's called patterning an animal.
Yeah.
You understand an animal's pattern. So a lot of hunting things come into play. Hunting tactics come into play with the type of photography that I would do.
So what is the kind of patterning that you look for, and like, how do you move around that to capture these images?
Well, what I try to do is I see where animals are in the mornings. Like, I'll say, for instance, if I see an eagle at the marsh on this one pine tree in the morning at 6:30 a.m., there's a really good chance he's going to be in that same place tomorrow. And then at maybe 7 o'clock, he's going to start his journey across the marsh and start scanning, hunting for targets.
Oh, wow.
Now, the idea is what you ideally want to do is not chase the animal. You want to figure out where that animal's going and be where that animal is heading, so you can get shots of the animal coming right at you. And
not probably disturb its pattern.
Right. And like some animals, you don't want to lock eyes with them. You don't want to lock eyes with them at first. If you want to get close to them, you don't want to lock eyes with them because they know, like these animals that I'm photographing have sensories way beyond humans,
Right.
So you want to avoid locking eyes with them until you get closer to them. You want to figure out where that animal's going. Mm-hmm. And you almost want to pretend that you don't even notice it. Like if I see an animal, I'll almost like kind of pretend that I don't even notice it. So I can figure out where it's going. When I initially saw it, it had a projected path where it's going. And so I try to figure out where that is so I can be there when that animal gets there and get shots straight in the eyes. The morning light is usually the best, but
now why do you like morning light?
The morning light, it's a lower light and it lights up more of their body. And I like to get low. It's important to get low, like to the same height as the animal as you can. And the morning light just seems to light up their feet, and it's like more of an even light, whereas afternoon light's just so
really harsh.
It's harsh and it's on top of them, and it just blows out a lot of stuff. It
was really interesting for me when you told me like, yeah, I'm shooting animals. It's like, here's another chapter in Karl's story that's just like another mind-blowing weird thing. And I was like, yeah, all right, whatever. Because you kind of like always self-deprecatingly go on about how like, oh, I'm no good at this, blah, 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 And I looked at your Instagram feed, and I was driving somewhere with my wife. You know her as Amber. And I like pulled up your feed, and I was like, he must be like copying other people's photos and putting them on here, because it was like instantly good. Like there was no like, yeah, well, that's nice, Karl. I mean, it was like the first, like from when you started posting stuff from that camera, I was like, holy cow. Like it was good. Like all of it. I kept like clicking on one. I was like, holy cow, Amber, look at this. This is Karl. And she's like, what?
Yeah, that's hilarious.
And in her opinion, she's like, oh, he's just wasting his time. Why is he not doing,
She said that?
Well, like she thinks of it as like, he should be getting a job and right. I was like, well, you just need to understand, Karl. So I'm like scrolling through it, and I'm literally like 20 times I'm like, look at this. This is Karl, and it's like blowing my mind. And then again, I look like my engagement rates are way lower than yours, and I do this professionally. And you're out there just doing this because you want to do it and you enjoy like. And I think it comes through. But what I'm getting at, I'll get to that later, your understanding of composition and light had absolutely no training. Like you have no, like we'll get to technical. You have no technical ability or knowledge with cameras or anything to do with photography other than your interest and personal taste in what you see, and that connects with you. Right. Like, how did you figure that out, and how do you go through your images and choose the ones that you keep? Like, first, how did you figure that out?
I just figured it out by going outside every day and just seeing. I always wanted to have my own path in this, and I wanted to do my own thing and have my own look. And I thought the only way I could do that is by just being out in the field and just doing this every day and just taking thousands of photos of one animal from all different angles, laying in the mud, like climbing over this, I'm going at things from way different angles than most photographers. A lot of them are bringing around big tripods and stuff. I think those keep you in the same place. They kill the whole adventure of it. I'll just get so many different angles of the same animal and different lights, different, angles, the light's hitting it. And it's all about angles and just, it's about relaxing and letting the animals come to you. I've heard
people say that if you'll sit in the woods for like a half hour without moving, that all of a sudden you'll start to see just animals.
Yeah, they pick up on movement. Yeah. So if you're still, that's a big advantage. Even fast movement versus regular movement. When you move fast, they want to split. They don't want to be around. You want to make all your movements slow and deliberate.
Right.
And yeah, it's rewarding when that animal comes to you and you figured out where it was going, and then you finally lock eyes with it. Like you want to be.
It's almost like getting barreled or something, to where it's like you planned ahead.
Right.
And I think that eagle's going to be going over here, and maybe he might skim the water and grab something, and I'm going to place myself over there.
Right.
And when that moment happens, it's kind of like I did it.
Yeah. Like when you finally, I'm always focused right on whatever animal it is. I'm focused right on their eyeballs, and I'm trying to get that photo that really moves me. That one, there's always one out of 500 or 1,000. There's always one that I'm just like, wow, the little glare in this animal's eyeball, like that's just perfect. And that little glare in its eyeball makes it look alive, versus if you get an animal and its eyes all black, like a great white shark or something, it looks dead. I like shots where the animal looks alive. It looks sharp.
Right. Has this changed the way you think of animals in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I've gained a lot of respect for animals and nature, and I mean, what they have to go through to survive all the time. They're hunting to stay alive every day, and yeah, when they miss, sometimes they miss a squirrel, sometimes they miss it, and they've expended so much energy to go after that. They're like, oh no, like it's amazing what animals go through to survive, especially Maine winters. Our winters are pretty harsh. If you look at what a gull goes through, they're amazing survivalists. So now my perception of animals has totally changed. I just admire them so much more in nature.
So you mentioned patterning. Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
So following animals' behaviors to then predict where they're going to be and when they're going to be places. What do you actually do to find those animals? Just basically go out and hike, or what?
Yeah, I'll go out and hike around, and I have spots where I love to just sit in the sun, and I'll just wait and see what comes along. I know, like, I live right next to the Scarborough Marsh, and it's like the birding mecca of Maine. It's the biggest marsh in Maine, and there's over 200 species of birds just in the Scarborough Marsh alone, and that's my backyard. So I walk there all the time. I have certain spots where I'll sit and just wait for things to come by. And yeah, I'm finding more and more that animals are doing the same thing at the same time every day. They'll come out in the morning, they'll eat, they'll get all their food, and then they go nap. They disappear for the afternoon.
Sounds like you.
Yeah. They disappear for the afternoon,
Right.
And sometimes you can find them taking their naps and stuff. But yeah, I will be out there all day. A lot of photographers just do the golden hour in the morning or whatever, and then they're done. But I'm literally out all day long, sun up to sundown, literally looking for animals and just being in nature, and I love it.
My son hates your photo of you have one of a stork getting a frog, I think.
Oh yeah, the frog's flying lessons.
Like, what the heck? Yeah, Simon's like, that's cool, but I hate it because he loves frogs. So. What's a typical day look like for you when you're shooting?
I'll just wake up before the sun does. I'll be up at before sunrise. I'll go to the beach, and I'll watch the sun come up every morning. That's my thing. And then I'll head to the marsh when the light's just coming up over the marsh. And then, I will spend most of my day on the marsh looking for animals and stuff. And from there, from not seeing a lot there, I'll drive to Falmouth, Yarmouth, like all different spots that I'll go to. There's hot spots for animals. I'll look for fields, where raptors like to hunt. They don't like to hunt in the woods because they're flying. They go so fast at their targets. They can't get around the trees, so they like big open fields.
I've got a natural cranberry bog over near my house.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And there's actually some hunter stands around there too, old ones. But I imagine that's probably not the best vantage point to watch for stuff like that.
Yeah, you don't want to be shooting down at stuff, but you want to be as close to their eye level, like I said, as possible. That really kind of engages you with the animal. Like if you see good nature shots of animals, the photographer lined themselves up level with their eyes, and it really brings you into the photo, and it's a neat effect.
So as I said earlier, you have no photographic background, but you've been able to show that you take really interesting images of subject matter that you're very interested in, animals. But it seems like the technical bridge was not hard for you to cross, even though you don't really know anything about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's very true.
I mean, you're basically shooting on automatic most of the time, I imagine.
Yeah, my camera's always on auto.
Right. That's so funny to me. But walk me through the gear you use and why. You kind of mentioned that earlier about like strategically not using a tripod. And
I don't use a tripod because I like to move around. I'm mostly shooting birds, and then I'm considered pretty much a youngster in the bird photography world.
Yeah.
I mean, all my bird buddies, they're all like over 70. They're retired, and instead of going to golf, they went to photography.
You're kind of retired.
Yeah. And so I'll lay down on things to get photos, and if they're standing right next to me and I'm laying down, guess what? The difference between my photo and theirs, it's going to be night and day. So I use a Nikon D500, which is pretty much known as the king of wildlife cameras.
It's got a really pretty high frame rate, right?
Yeah, it does. It does 10 frames a second.
You do the motor drive when you're in that moment. You're just like
yeah. So I can shoot 200 frames in a row at 10 frames a second. I'll just hold on that shutter, and every single shot will be in focus. That's the amazing thing about this camera.
Right.
Every shot's in focus. So every flight shot I take, if I take 500 shots of a bird flying, they're all going to be in focus. It's really an amazing camera.
And what lens do you typically use?
I have a Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter sport lens, and this lens is much heavier than the other lenses of this size. And I remember I used to shoot target rifles, and I always wanted to get the heaviest one I could find.
Oh, because it keeps it a little more steady.
It keeps it on target. That's why target rifles, like if you pick them up, they weigh a ton.
Yeah.
It keeps it on target. So if a bird's flying along, I can keep this on target much easier. Even though it's heavier, I can keep it on target way easier with a heavy lens. But there's another advantage. The birding guys, they can't lug around this camera that I carry around. It's heavy, but it produces awesome images. I'm really happy with it.
Huh. It's just such an interesting, another chapter in Karl's life, for me to observe. It's just like 5 years ago, if I had told you, like, oh, this is what you're going to be into, you'd be like, whatever.
Yeah,
no way.
I know. I would have laughed, but it's like another stage in my life that I love, and it gets me out in nature every day. That's where I want to be, and it's really peaceful, and it's like I'm just alone with my thoughts all day. I love that
must be
aspect.
Torture.
Yeah, and I just sit in the sun like a seal, and I'm just like, just waiting to see what's going to come by.
So I mean, you've already, from your Instagram feed, you've interacted with and had some use of your images, like LL Bean, EMS, a lot of the really big birding sites, just Instagram sites and stuff, have featured a lot of your stuff. You really don't care much to make a living.
Right.
But do you see any way that you could eventually start to turn this into something that makes more money? I mean, there's a lot of different things you could do with the images.
There's a lot of things I could do. I mean, I could have. See, the problem is I want to be out in the field all the time shooting. That's all I want to do. I don't want to do any editing. If I wanted to take it further, I would have someone editing the photos, because I do not want to sit in front of a computer ever. I tried it, and I didn't even last a night. But yeah, I could bring it further that way if I had someone editing the photos. But at the same time, if I have someone editing photos, then it's not me. I want I want it all to be me, and I want it my way. And I think that a lot of people that have been successful at what they do have done it their own way. And maybe I break the rules of photography. I never bothered to learn them, but maybe I break them. I don't know, but it's really important for me to have my own style, which I do, and it's rewarding for me that people recognize my photos. Like, people write to me, they're like, I knew it was you before I even looked at the name.
Really?
Yeah, and I get that. I get that like
I
all the
people
time.
Tell me that about my architectural stuff too, and it's interesting to me. I don't see it as much as other people see it in my work, which is interesting.
Same here, but I hear it all the time. They're like, I knew it was you, and a lot of times I don't even realize I'm doing it. I'm cropping in images like just showing an eagle's head.
Right.
And the way I've done it, people are like, I just knew it was you. Like, right. And that's kind of rewarding,
it shows a consistency, a consistent vision that you're interested in. I think you have to hook up with like National Geographic or something now.
Yeah,
I can send you out to like Tajikistan and you can photograph the snow leopard or something. Sit in the blind for 30 days. And
I'd have to do it my own way though. Like everything, like the shooting on auto thing, like people are like, there's no way you're shooting on auto getting these images. And I'm like, well, yes, I am. And I'm on auto. All I got to do is turn it on. If something goes into flight, guess what? I turn it on, boom, done. I don't have to adjust anything. So that I'm getting a lot of photos that
other
maybe people didn't. Yeah, because they're just playing with their adjustments.
Yeah, I'm so accustomed to like I scope out a room or exterior building, and then I find my tripod position, and then I put the camera on, and then I get my settings right, and then I get the lens, and it's like a whole process, like how I do it.
Right.
And to think how much differently your experience of capturing images is compared to what I do, and then you think about how a wedding photographer works. They're kind of like circling a hurricane, that's just and then our friend Joe, who you'll find him just wandering Old Orchard Beach all summer, just kind of getting pictures of people, and he'll usually use like a really wide angle lens to get close to people,
right,
to get that feel. And I remember I was talking to Joe about your images, and he's like, yeah, he's like zoom lens guy. It's so different than me. Like, you're using this really long focal length and getting in on these hard to get subjects, and Joe's using like a tiny camera with a really wide lens, and he just kind of wanders and captures these human moments. I think it'd be so interesting if you wandered around Old Orchard Beach with your long lens and approached people like wildlife and saw what you got. That could be so.
You'd be like, whoa, what's going on here?
I get a really low angle and I just hang out on the beach and I wait for a.
Yeah.
That could be hilarious.
Yeah, that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah.
Joe has a cool style. He's all about people and culture.
Yeah.
Like anthropology or something with his camera. It's really, his style is just, I'm just like, whoa. Well, and there again, I can tell it's Joe's photo.
Oh yeah, as soon as you see it, you're like, oh, yeah, there's some more Joe stuff. Well, cool. Thanks for coming in and sharing a lot about what you do. It's always really cool to talk to someone else who's just getting into it, and especially someone like you who's just taken off with it and produced interesting results so quickly, to get kind of a little bit of feedback. And I think knowing you, I think your personality, where you focus in on and obsess on things a little bit,
certainly,
obviously,
I definitely do,
contributes to that. So anyways, cool. Well, luckily it was a rainy day, so we were able to get Karl in, because it's, as you said, like the animals actually hunker down and don't come out.
Yeah, when it's windy or when it's raining, they hunker down. They don't want to. They don't want to be out and about. That's the way it is.
Well, cool. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks a lot, Trent.
Later, dude.
Bye-bye.